What if I told you an Amish family raises 400 quail and collects hundreds of eggs every week without spending a single dollar on feed? No store runs, no monthly bill, just a system built entirely from what most people throw away. Why quail first? Most Amish farms raise chickens, but a growing number have turned to Coturnix quail, and the reason is simple. Quail begin laying at just 6 to 8 weeks old. Each hen produces close to 300 eggs per year. They need only 1 square foot of space per bird, and they convert feed into eggs more efficiently than any other bird on a farm, housing 400 birds. 400 quail sounds like a large operation. Inside an Amish farm, it takes up remarkably little space. Coturnix quail need just 1 square foot per bird, meaning 400 birds fit inside a structure smaller than most American living rooms. Amish quail setups typically use tiered wire-bottom cages stacked 3 to 4 levels high inside a simple wooden shed. Wire floors let droppings fall through into collection trays below, and those droppings are never wasted. They feed the system that feeds the birds. No electricity, no automated feeders, just well-built cages, clean water, and daily attention. The daily egg math. Before explaining how they feed 400 quail for free, it helps to understand why the effort is worth making. At a healthy lay rate of 80%, 400 hens produce roughly 320 eggs per day, more than 2,000 eggs per week. In an Amish household, those eggs serve multiple purposes. Some feed the family directly. Others go to farm stands, neighbors, or community markets. At modest pricing, a flock this size generates several $100s of income every single month. The eggs more than pay for themselves many times over, which makes zero feed costs not just impressive, it is what makes the entire operation worth running at all. Black soldier flies. The most important piece of the zero-cost system is one most people have never heard of. Black soldier fly larvae, called BSFL, are protein-packed grubs that eat organic waste and convert it into one of the best natural protein sources available for poultry. They contain up to 42% protein by dry weight and are rich in calcium, exactly what a laying hen needs. Here is how the Amish use them. Kitchen scraps, vegetable trimmings, and food waste go into a simple wooden bin. Black soldier flies, common throughout North America, find the bin naturally, lay their eggs in the waste, and within days the bin fills with larvae. Those larvae can reduce food waste volume by up to 95% within 24 hours. Once ready, the larvae crawl out through a built-in sloped ramp and drop into a collection bucket below. That bucket goes directly to the quail. No purchased feed, no packaging, no monthly cost. Just kitchen waste converted into high-quality protein. The worm farm. While black soldier fly larvae handle the heavy protein side of the diet, the worm farm handles a different but equally important part, and it runs on nothing but household scraps. A red wiggler worm farm is one of the simplest setups on any Amish homestead. A wooden box, shredded newspaper, or dried leaves for bedding, and a daily supply of kitchen waste is all it takes. Red wiggler worms eat that organic matter and convert it into 2 things: rich castings that go back into the garden, and more worms that go directly to the quail as a free protein supplement. For 400 birds, a single worm bin is not enough. Most Amish operations this size run several bins simultaneously, each fed daily from accumulated kitchen and household waste. The bins sit in a shaded corner of the barn where temperatures stay stable. In warm months, they produce more than enough worms to serve as a daily supplement. In colder months, production slows, but by then, other parts of the system compensate. What the worm farm does that the soldier fly bin cannot is operate through cooler temperatures when flies are not active. The 2 systems work together across all 4 seasons, keeping the protein supply steady year-round without a single bag of commercial feed entering the picture. Kitchen scrap feed. Most homesteads treat kitchen scraps as something to get rid of. On an Amish quail farm, they are a managed resource, sorted, allocated, and distributed with the same care as any other farm input. Vegetable peels, fruit scraps, leftover greens, stale bread, cooked grains, and spent herbs all go into the feeding system rather than a waste bin. Quail are not picky eaters, They will work through leafy greens, corn scraps, watermelon rinds, carrot tops, and herb cuttings without hesitation. Soft foods go directly to the birds. Harder scraps and fibrous material go into the soldier fly bin or the worm farm, where they get processed into protein before reaching the quail. The Amish sorting system is not complicated. It does not require labels or schedules. It runs on the habit of a household that has decided nothing edible leaves the farm without being used first. What the quail cannot eat feeds the larvae. What the larvae cannot use goes to the worm bin. What the worms leave behind feeds the garden. Nothing moves in a straight line from use to waste. Everything moves in a circle. Garden waste system. An Amish farm grows most of its own vegetables, and a vegetable garden produces a steady stream of material that most gardeners treat as yard waste, but that an Amish quail operation treats as a feeding resource. Spent plant stalks, wilted leaves, thinned seedlings, outer cabbage leaves, corn husks, bean vines after harvest, and overgrown herbs all come out of the garden on a regular basis throughout the growing season. Some of it goes directly to the quail pens. Dandelion, chickweed, clover, and plantain common weeds in any Amish garden are particularly valuable. Quail eat them readily and benefit from the vitamins and minerals they contain. Kale tops, beet greens, carrot leaves, and herb stems all serve the same purpose. What the quail will not eat from the garden goes to the worm bin or the soldier fly bin. Even material those systems cannot use gets added to the compost pile, which eventually feeds the garden beds, which produce the next round of garden waste. The loop tightens with every season. The more the system runs, the less outside input it requires. Sprouted seed method. One of the most underused tools in a zero-cost quail feeding system is also one of the easiest to set up. Sprouted seeds provide a living, enzyme-rich food source that costs almost nothing to produce and delivers significant nutritional value to laying hens. The process is simple. Wheat, barley, oats, or sunflower seeds are soaked in water for 8 to 12 hours, then spread in shallow trays and rinsed twice daily for 3 to 5 days. Within that window, the seeds germinate and produce green shoots packed with vitamins, digestible protein, and natural enzymes that improve nutrient absorption in the birds. On an Amish farm, the grain for sprouting usually comes from the farm's own harvest, stored wheat or barley that costs nothing beyond the land it grew on. A family running multiple trays in rotation can produce a continuous daily supply of fresh sprouts with minimal effort. The quail receive the sprouted material mixed with other feed components, which improves laying consistency, eggshell quality, and overall flock health. In winter, when garden waste is scarce and soldier fly activity drops, sprouted seeds become one of the primary food sources. They can be grown inside the barn in any temperature above freezing, making them a year-round option that requires no electricity, no purchased inputs, and no specialized equipment. Mobile pen foraging. Not all of the 400 birds stay in stationary cages year-round. A portion of the flock, typically the younger birds or those being rotated through the system, spend time in mobile ground pens that are moved across fresh pasture every few days. A mobile quail pen, sometimes called a quail tractor, is a small enclosed frame with wire sides and a solid roof that can be lifted and moved by 1 or 2 people. The birds inside have access to whatever is growing on the ground beneath them: grass, clover, insects, worms, seeds, and small beetles. As the pen moves to fresh ground every day or two, the birds get constant access to natural forage while staying protected from predators. This method works particularly well in spring and summer when the pasture is green and insect populations are high. A quail in a mobile pen on good pasture can meet a meaningful portion of its daily nutritional needs from what it finds in the ground beneath its feet, reducing the load on the indoor feeding systems and giving the birds natural, foraging behavior that improves their overall condition. The manure left behind by the mobile pens fertilizes the pasture as it moves, improving next season's grass growth and insect density. The birds improve the land. The land feeds the birds. Full system breakdown. At this point, it is worth stepping back and seeing how all of these pieces work together as a single operating system rather than a collection of separate strategies. The 400 birds are split between stationary cage units and mobile ground pens. The stationary birds receive daily feeding from a combination of black soldier fly larvae, worm farm output, kitchen scraps, garden waste, and sprouted grains, all of which are produced on the farm using waste streams that would otherwise go unused. The mobile birds forage fresh pasture during the warmer months, reducing pressure on the indoor feeding systems during the highest production period of the year. The quail manure from the stationary cages drops into collection trays, which get emptied into the compost pile or applied directly to garden beds. That manure feeds the soil feeds the garden produces waste that feeds the birds and the soldier fly bins. The soldier fly bins produce larvae that feed the quail and leave behind a nutrient-rich residue that also goes back to the garden. No purchased feed enters the system at any point in this cycle. The startup cost building the worm bins, soldier fly setup, sprouting trays, and mobile pens is a one-time investment using materials available on any working farm. After that, the system runs on the farm's own waste, its own soil, its own harvest, and the daily labor of a family that has decided self-sufficiency is not a goal, but a standard. 400 birds, zero feed cost, every single month. Winter without waste. The most common question about a zero-cost quail feeding system is simple. What happens in winter? No garden waste, no soldier fly activity, no fresh pasture under the mobile pens. For several months, the warm season inputs that drive most of the system simply stop producing. The Amish answer to this is preparation, not panic. Through late summer and early fall, surplus larvae are harvested and dried for cold season storage. Worm bins are moved into the barn where temperatures stay above freezing, keeping production slow but steady through the coldest months. Sprouting trays run continuously indoors, fed by stored grain from the harvest. Dried garden material, seed heads, stored root vegetables, dried herbs gets rationed out through the winter alongside the sprouted grains and stored larvae. Some Amish families also maintain a small stock of dried duckweed, a fast-growing water plant harvested from ponds through the warmer months and sun-dried into a protein-rich powder that stores well and mixes easily. Into the winter feeding rotation. The flock's egg production naturally slows in shorter daylight months. Fewer eggs means lower nutritional demand across the flock. The reduced system output and the reduced flock demand meet each other at almost exactly the right point. Winter does not break the system. It simply runs it at a lower gear, still closed, still self-sufficient, still free. What the Amish quail system demonstrates is not a farming trick. It is not a hack or a shortcut. It is the result of a way of thinking about a farm that most modern agriculture has moved away from, but that Amish communities have maintained for generations. In the modern food system, inputs come from outside and waste goes out. Feed is purchased. Scraps are discarded. Manure is managed as a problem. The farm is a machine that consumes resources to produce a product, and the gap between what comes in and what goes out determines the profit margin. In an Amish quail operation, the farm is a cycle. What comes out of the kitchen feeds the larvae. What the larvae leave behind feeds the garden. What the garden produces feeds the birds and restocks the bins. What the birds leave behind feeds the soil. Nothing leaves the system as pure waste. Everything that exits one stage re-enters at another. This is not unique to quail. Amish farmers apply this same logic to cattle, hogs, gardens, and grain. But quail make the system especially visible because the inputs and outputs are so concentrated and so fast-moving. A soldier fly bin can turn yesterday's vegetable scraps into today's bird feed within a single day. A worm bin converts last week's kitchen waste into this week's protein supplement. The cycle is short enough to see clearly, which is perhaps why more Amish families are turning to quail as a way to demonstrate, in a small and manageable operation, exactly what it means to run a farm that takes care of itself. 400 birds, 300 eggs a day, not $1 spent on feed. That is not a boast. That is just what happens when you stop treating waste as a problem and start treating it as a resource.